Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Whew. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being flexible and allowing us to punt over to Teams given our WebEx issues. Glad everybody could make it. Frank, I tried calling you to see if I could add your phone, but I don't know if it made it through or not.
Must not.
I believe we have everybody here who is going to attend, and I did not send out an agenda for this meeting because really what I need is just authorization of the same amount of money from last year, which was $350,000. I would have asked for this during the full board meeting. However, I was not quite conscious for all of that. I'm a little behind on getting the letters out to the Alton, you're on mute. Alton, I can see your mouth moving. Are you talking to us?
Hang on a second. Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Are you okay? Are you fully restored to health? Because you sound really bad last time.
I am fully healthy, and as a matter of fact, Maria and I are going to a conference with, well, Rick was going. We're going to the NCARB deal, so I'm about to get on a plane in a day's time. But I think before we actually, now that we're doing this online, I'm having to toggle back and forth between habits. I need Maria to give us a statement of necessity for this online meeting.
Act by popular demand is a statement of necessity. And if you will all excuse me, I've been battling a summer cold. So anyhow, this is a specially scheduled meeting of the Tennessee Board of Architectural and Engineer Examiners Grant Committee, which is taking place by electronic means utilizing the Teams teleconference application on Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. Notice of this meeting was properly posted to the board's website. Because there is not a physical quorum present, a statement of necessity is read into the record and filed with the Tennessee Secretary of State as required by statute. Pursuant to TCA 844-108B2, if a physical quorum is not present at the location of a meeting of a governing body, then in order for a quorum of members to participate by electronic or other means of communication, the governing body must make a determination that a necessity exists. That determination must include a recitation of the facts and circumstances on which it was based. Further, TCA 844-1083 defines necessity as matters to be considered by the governing body at that meeting require timely action by the body, that physical presence by a quorum of members is not practical within the period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of the members by electronic or other means of communications is necessary. As stated, this is a specially scheduled meeting for the Tennessee Board of Architectural and Engineer Examiners Grants Committee. The purpose of this meeting, with members attending by teleconference, is to discuss and approve time-sensitive information related to grants for higher education. The Teams conference is teleconference application is being used in order to provide the most efficient and timely manner of meeting. All voting will be conducted by roll call. Thank you.
All right, Maria, let me be the first to say I don't remember them being that long. Thank you, Maria. And again, just going back to the beginning, I did not send out, there was no posted agenda for this meeting because I believe it's of its simplicity, and that is to request authorization from the Grants to Higher Education Committee to send out letters pertaining to the 2022 grant awards at a level of $350,000. If there is any discussion that needs to be had, please feel free to discuss.
Michael, this is Alton again, but just to follow protocols, should we ask for a roll call for validation of who's here?
Look at us. Gosh, we're like 1 month away from digital meetings, and already I'm acting like an animal, like it's Lord of the Flies over here. Okay. Okay then, Mr. Heathcote.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Ms. Doss.
I am present.
Mr. Tibbs.
Present.
Mr. Wagster.
Here.
Okay, that's great. Those are our stated attendees. As a matter, just so that we're clear, Mr. Ben Brickta is unable to join today. And I think he is the only one missing. Okay, so now that
We shall declare that we have a quorum then.
Yes, sir. We do have a quorum and are able to conduct business. So with that in mind, are there any discussion? Is there anything to discuss or any questions regarding the requested amount of $350,000 to be reauthorized?
Michael, I don't have a question, but about that especially, but remind me, is Alton, are you the chair of this committee now?
I think I am, Frank.
Okay, I just wanted, I wasn't sure.
I did not vote myself in. I think our good friend Susan asked that I be appointed chairman, and I agreed to serve in that capacity.
All right, good.
As long as you don't blame me, I'm glad.
You had something to do with it too, Brian. You had to authorize it.
Yeah, you didn't vote against it.
Exactly.
This is true. This is true. I do. And
Whatever happens then, Brian, is your fault.
Maria, you'll never want to record one of these again. Okay.
Glad everybody's having a good time today. All right. Yes, Alton, Mr. Chairman, how would you like to proceed?
Yeah, there being no printed agenda, the issues that I suppose, Michael, that we want to take up were the ones that you mentioned at the introduction to this, and that's to, I'm assuming that we want to request authorization of expenditure of that $350,000 that we had proposed allocated towards grants to colleges. Do we need a motion to do that? I thought that was previously done. When we set our budget for this year, when we voted on our budget for this year, was that $350,000 not already appropriated thereby?
You know what? I don't know. Maria, do you recall?
I'm not sure.
I do remember that the Finance Committee voted on the budget, or I'm sorry, proposed a budget to the full board, and I believe the board adopted the budget as presented by the committee, which would have included the $350,000.
Okay. I'm sure we have that committee meeting in minutes. That would have been last October. So let me go through and see if I can find that 2020 October. Rats. You know what? I don't think we were keeping notes on any committee meetings back in 2020. We didn't start keeping notes on committee meetings until 2021.
I think, Michael, I may be mistaken, but, and Brian, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that action would have been presented to the full board for its review and approval. So it should be in a board meeting.
I'm checking the minutes for October 7, 2020.
It may have even been in the.
Oh boy, this is a big one. Okay, we had. There, I see under new business for the Finance Committee, there was a proposal to increase the grants appropriation. But there's nothing in the minutes that states that any action was taken. So that's just the committee.
I believe that's correct. And again, I may be mistaken, but I thought that we had talked about increasing it to 400,000.
Let me see if I can Here we go. Legal report, director's report. Okay. I don't see anything. What I see here in the minutes from that meeting, Alton, is that we had 17 universities with a total grant amount of $395,256. So I believe you're right, and that $400,000 would be the appropriate amount to authorize. However, in the finance committee meeting or the finance committee report, I do not see anything specific about the budget. It only says the committee discussed the finances from July 2019 to July 2020.
Hey, Michael, do you have, from the last board meeting, do you have a copy of the budget? Because normally that's included in the discussion or in the information that we get. And it should have that line item listed in there.
Let me check this committee meetings. I don't have a document that says budget.
Let me ask a question. If you were to still get what you needed, Michael, from this committee today, would that circumvent what had already been done? Would that still just give you the tools, or?
This would allow me to at least reach out and start the process, the application process, until the universities receive a letter from us, which, like I said, had everything gone according to plan, they would have received it at the beginning of June instead of the end of June now. That basically states that there's this X amount of money that is available and that the season for application is now open.
Alton, do you mind if we still just cover that with this, call committee meeting, and then if Michael finds out, the board did it anyway, that would just be all for the better. That way, we don't, in case he can't, in case he needs more time to look for it.
Yeah, I agree with that, Brian. Why don't we do this? Why don't we by vote authorize Michael to send out letters to each of the colleges requesting their applications and providing them the applications for this grant and for the amount of the award to be in accordance with the amount budgeted in our line item for awards, grants to colleges.
Are we supposed to say aye, or?
I think there needs to be a second though, does there not?
Oh, I second that.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I've got a question, Alton.
Yes, sir.
From what you just described, are we basing what we're requesting on what the schools request?
No, we'll make the awards predicated on the budget that's available. The schools will enter whatever their request is. And even last year, I will say, Frank, we had a couple of schools that could have requested more. They would have been eligible for more, but didn't. And I think during the October meeting with the colleges, we made them aware of that. So hopefully this year, when the letter goes out, basically what the letter does, I don't know how many of you have a copy of the letter that Michael sends out.
I understand that part. I guess the question I'm headed towards is, let's say, since we haven't found it, that we have not made, at this point, made a request for $400,000 for us to, give the money to the schools that make these requests. But if that hasn't been done, do we need to have a motion to give Michael the guidance to request $400,000?
Or
If
Michael,
if
would
it
you-
hasn't already been allocated.
That could be part of the motion, I think. But if
So,
there isn't one, if
as
we
to-
can't
to
find
just-
it,
Sorry, Frank.
no, that's,
To add to this part of the conversation, I found the final voted on minutes that were in the November meeting. And it says that Mr. Bricktow wanted to discuss raising the total amount of money available for grants, but Mr. Heathcote wanted to wait until next year to see what requests were received because this year we're under $400,000. So
I guess now we're at a point where we need to send out the requests.
we do need to start that because
But I don't think from what you're describing, we can wait till we get their answers back before we request the funds. Is that,
Just so that everybody knows, the letter that goes out to the colleges, and I have it here in front of me, the opening sentence is, "I'm pleased to inform you that the Board of Architectural and Engineering Examiners has been authorized to utilize up to," and in June of 19, it said $350,000
Right.
of its revenue or reserve funds to provide several grants to various colleges and universities in Tennessee, so on. So we usually do put the number in there. Why don't we do this? Let's want to make sure. That's why I used the terminology that I did, is to sort of leave it open for Michael to go back and review and determine whether or not we actually did vote to put $400,000 in there, and we can, or if we didn't do that, then he would put $350,000 in there instead. And the motion that I made would give him the latitude to have time to look that up so that he could put that number into the letter that goes out to the colleges.
yeah, we need to go back and check the tape since the meetings or the meeting minutes it appears in the meeting minutes that there was no action taken.
Okay.
so that begs the question, do we want to request $400,000?
Well, just because we request it doesn't mean we have to use it all.
Good point. But again, with the $400,000, and for those of you that don't know, the way that's parceled out is, if it were $400,000, we would take 200 and distribute it unilaterally across the board to each one. If we had, let's say, for example, if we had 20 applicants, each one of them would get $10,000 out of that. And then the other 50% of that amount, let's say if it was $400,000 total, then the other $200,000 would be distributed on a pro rata basis based on their student population.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it can and would probably make a nice difference if we had the 400. And I know that we did talk about that, but again, I'd rather leave it open as I had it and give Michael the chance to go back and research this to determine whether or not, in fact, we can attribute $400,000 to this or not. I mean, if we want to put 350 in there, but then in our August meeting, raise that to 400 officially, if we haven't taken action on that, we can do that too.
That is a possibility. I mean, we could approve the last year's see, did we just lose Maria? Oh, she just turned her camera off. That's okay. Okay. In last year's letter, we stated that the amount was $350,000. However, the meeting minutes state, Alton, that you said we had $395,000 requested. So that would mean that, $40,000 roughly was not met in terms of requests. So we could send out the letter that says 350. That's not going to change anyone's minds on how much money they request, I think. And then ask the full board for an authorization of $400,000 at the next meeting.
Again, that is fine with me.
Well, let me ask you one more question, Michael. Is there, I'm assuming there's competition for this money, but is there any kind of a deadline for asking for this money? If it needs to be done 2 weeks from now, we need to go ahead and do that. If it isn't, then fine.
We had a date. Let's see. The letter that I'm looking at here is dated June. That's not it. I'm in the wrong.
Roughly around June the 7th. And then Frank, we asked them to return it to us by August the 1st so that we can review it hopefully during the August board meeting, or I'm sorry, grants committee meeting.
So Alton, last year's letter went out on June 10th, 2020, and we gave them until September 11th, 2020 to review. So we gave them 2 full months. So that it could be reviewed and then at the committee meeting and then presented in October.
Right. I'm looking at the other aspect of that. I mean, I understand getting the letters out and getting it back, that part. The question I have to you is, somebody has to appropriate this money to us, I'm assuming from the state. And so is there a deadline for you to request from the state the amount of money?
Frank, this doesn't actually come from the state. This is an element of our own budget that we vote on and approve every year.
That's correct.
And our budget comes from the state, right?
Well, it comes from revenues that we
revenue.
generate. Yeah, we don't really get any money. Actually, the state takes money out of our fund sometimes, but all of the revenues that are generated that fund us are from our constituents, not from any other state fund.
So we're requesting from ourselves.
Yes, we set our own budget based on the amount of revenue we project we're going to have for the year, and the expenses that we anticipate having for the year.
And for point of reference, the most recent financial statement I have, which was included in the last board meeting's materials, is for April. Yes, April. And as of April, we have a $2.4 million reserve balance.
And we generally, Michael, add to that every year, even with the 350 that we'd spent previously. And we did. Go ahead.
Excuse me. I have a quick question about the awards that were made last year and the schools that were not able to use to spend their monies that were awarded to them. What is the status of that? And does that money that was not spent, does it go back to the general finances, or what happens to that money?
I think it goes back, again, this is just my recollections as a member of the finance committee. I think it goes back into that debt service reserve, or not debt service reserve, general reserve fund that we have accumulated.
That's correct. After I send out the notice of application season being open in August or July, I think, maybe August, I'll send out a second one that says your receipt for the receipts for this year. So your receipts are due. And then if you have it in that letter, it'll also state if you have not used all of your money, you need to write us a check and send it back. And then it goes back into the general surplus.
Okay, so everything I've heard so far, it sounds like Alton's motion, and I think Brian's second is appropriate for what we're doing.
I think it is, Frank. I think it gives us the latitude to increase that number as we need to. But again, if in fact we did not take any action as a board, not as a committee, but as a board, to adopt a budget and include that $400,000 in there, Michael, I do think we need to have that as part of the maybe August agenda. Or yes, August agenda.
Yeah, I would agree.
Does anybody disagree with that?
No, and in fact, I was looking at the minutes of our previous meeting. It'd be a good thing for us to have a budget review at each meeting. I didn't see any budget numbers there.
I think, Michael, usually there's a one sheet spreadsheet, Frank, that usually appears towards the back of the stuff that he sends out to us.
Yeah, I
And
was
it
looking
shows
at that.
where we are to date, but it doesn't show, I don't think it shows what our actual budget is. It just shows revenue and expenses to date.
Yeah, it really, yeah, it's very general. It just shows per month the surplus and deficit.
Right.
Yeah, I've actually pulled it up right. I've got it pulled up. Yeah, salary, technology, and other. There's some cost backs and investigations, field enforcement. We don't ever have any of those. We pay for our customer service center and complaints staff, as we do with the lawyers and Maria's time. But yes, it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't get down into very specific items, meaning it doesn't show what we spend on
Office
paper.
supplies or
Yeah, that all falls under other, which is, you know, that's where that's where the grants fall under as well. So one of the things that I would have pointed out here in February and March, our other column or our other line went from, you know, 10,000, we'll just say an average of about $10,000 to $291,000 in February, and then $126,000, 127 rounding up to in March.
Right. And that's under other.
Correct. Correct. Then that's where that's where the grants fall.
yes. Right. And I think, Michael, most of those grant dollars are written out over about a 2-month process.
They start the process as soon as they're authorized by the full board in October. And the awards are, you know, we make announcement of the awards to the schools. They get those contracts done up by the end of the year, send them out in January to be executed no later than February so that we can start spending that money out as soon as possible. In the meantime, we allow schools to make purchases in good faith and keep their receipts, obviously, so that, you know, they can just kind of reimburse themselves for those expenditures. But they can go ahead and get them done while they're waiting on the money to actually get there.
That's correct. That's exactly correct. So again, we go back. I think we have a motion in a second. Maria, we may have gotten lost in the minutia here. Do you have, is there any way you can kind of repeat the motion back so everybody hears it again?
Or from what I recalled, it was that Michael would have the discretion to go ahead and send out the letters, and that you were reiterating, if it was in fact reiterating the approval from last time, then it would just be reinforcing that. But if not, then this would qualify as the motion to approve the $1,000 budget.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah, am I missing anything from that? But that was my understanding.
No, that's
Okay.
the general synopsis. Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? See, Melanie's grinning a lot.
She
So,
must be
okay.
watching. I bet she's got friends or something.
She's glad it's coming to a
watching
vote.
something.
I think so too. Okay,
Yes.
so we have
Yes.
a motion and a second with no additional discussion. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Heathcote,
I vote yes.
Ms. Doss,
Yes.
Mr. Tibbs,
Yes.
Mr. Waxter.
Yes.
All right, that passes. I have one question for you now. I don't believe it requires a vote, but this does require your consideration because you all will be reviewing these applications as members of the committee. Is Friday, September 10th, do you feel like that would give you an appropriate amount of time to review these? That gives you 1, 2, 3 full weeks to review the applications before the October board meeting.
Let me, before we answer that, let me caution everybody for somebody that's done this a couple of times before. Sometimes these can be kind of overwhelming. One, you've got to ensure that whatever they're asking for is in compliance with what our grant guidelines authorize us to give. And sometimes they are not. Occasionally they're not. So in those particular situations, the other thing, what we've tried to do in the past is exercise a little latitude and flexibility. And that's to say, if, for example, I'm just TSU asks for something that's not eligible, we generally will try to contact them back and let them know, hey guys, this isn't eligible. You need to resubmit something else for a re-review. That's the one problem, Michael, is they would have a very short period of time to get that back in and get a re-review done in order for us to make a recommendation at the October committee meeting. And we have had that happen in each of the last 2 years.
That is correct. Last year, I don't think that we had received everything, or there were a couple schools in the process last year that had intended to use money for salaries for
Yes.
student workers that were in, say, the math lab or something. That was math with an A, math lab. We had to call them back, but you all granted me, at that time, you all granted me the authority to approve those amendments so long as they complied with the rules of usage. So we could do something like that again, or we could, if we see it on the front end, we could ask them at that time, or I could ask them to revise their statement, or even sitting right there with them on the phone, say, can we strike this line, and what would you like to add? Maybe I can write it in for them.
I think that would be fine. I just want to make everybody aware that 3 weeks sounds like a long period of time, and I know all of us are busy and have other things to do, but it took, and I'm very slow, and I understand that, but it took me kind of a long time to go through what I think were there 20. How many do we have?
We had 17 last year, I think.
Okay, it felt like more. But wading through all those and making the determination about, whether or not the components they're asking for were in fact eligible, and then determining, look, quite frankly, if they ask for it and it's eligible, I'm going to say yes, because they know what their needs are a lot better than I do. And if it helps them and they've determined it's a priority for them, great. I have no issue, problem, or concern with that. But does 3 weeks, Michael, give them enough time to resubmit and then get the information back to you and you use your judgment as to determine whether or not they are in fact eligible.
I think 3 weeks is plenty of time for them. I mean, for them, it's just a singular instance. You know, for you all, it could be multiple. You know, it could be 5 schools, but for them, it's just one thing. You know, so having direct contact with those grant coordinators or the deans, which we do have, it would be easy, I think, to impress upon them the need for speed.
Okay, then I'm fine with. You say September 10th?
I said September 10th. You know, we could make it. We could give another week in there and say September 3rd. That's the Friday right before. I think that's Labor Day weekend. That's the Friday of Labor Day weekend. So that we would have these in by that time. If Labor Day is on the 6th, we could have them in by the 3rd, or we could have them in by the 10th.
So it's the will of the committee. Or does anybody else have a thought? I don't have any problem with that time frame. Does anybody else?
I would suggest now talking about it out loud, I would say that maybe Friday the 3rd makes more sense because it's kind of like there's a barrier there. It's a holiday weekend. So get it in before the holiday weekend. And then that would give you all then 4 weeks to review. And it would give them 2 full months, August and July, to get this process done.
That should be plenty of time for them. My bigger concern is the time frame. If we discover that something that they've asked for is not an eligible item, to get that notification back to them and get them to turn it around or ask for something in its place, and for you, Michael, then to be able to determine its eligibility.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's not a problem. I think most of these folks have pretty good ideas of what they, this is a wish list. And, I don't remember, you remember what it's like to make a Christmas list. You could make one 2 miles long, probably. Oh, can't get that. Well, let's go to the next thing. I think these folks know what they want to ask for. And if something gets crossed off the list, they just go right down to the next thing.
Okay. All right. I'm okay. Excuse me with that. I would say that one other thing is in scheduling the grants committee meeting and for our October session, we need to make sure we've got plenty of time allocated for that.
I'm sorry, guys. I have a hard stop here. Looks like you still have quorum if you have more meeting business to do, but is there any more meeting business we have?
Brian, I think we've already voted on the one thing we needed to vote on. So thank you very much for being here, and thanks for your input as always.
Okay, see y'all.
Good to see you.
Thanks
See you,
again,
Brian.
Frank.
Yeah, Brian.
Grants committee, so.
I've got a question.
Sorry, Frank, go ahead.
Yeah. If let's say we're saying their deadline to get their request in is Friday, the September the 3rd.
Yes.
What kind of time are we allowing ourselves to review?
That would be 4 weeks, 4 full weeks between there and, let me make sure of the date.
Well, not really, Michael, because if we discover that there's an error or they've asked for something that is not eligible, we need to give them ample time to get that notification back to them and get it resubmitted before we vote on it at the October meeting. So really, that really gives us maybe 2 weeks to do that.
Well, like I said, they turn these things around pretty quickly. And in my short experience, we've already handled 2 of these after the awards have been made. So I think it's, and in that case, they have to conform within the amount of dollars that were already allocated for that one spot. So let's say they ask for $2,300. Well, you can't spend it on salaries, so they got to come up with something to spend $2,300 on, and just that. So if you get it back to them before, it could very well alter the actual award, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that because we're giving them the opportunity for that. But should we catch it excuse me, after the awards are given and we ask them to amend it, then, it falls within that very constrictive amount of dollars that were already pre-allocated. So either way is fine. And I'm pretty confident that if we said, can you have it back to us by the end of the week? The answer is going to be yes.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
think you all could theoretically, as kind of a working model, you could say, you as a group are going to have these things turned out in 3 weeks, and that would give a 1 week buffer should any amendments or changes need to be sought after.
I'm okay with that. Is everybody else okay? Do you think, would anybody else have any issue with reviewing these in over a couple of weeks or even 3-week period?
I don't, Adam.
Okay.
Okay, so just to be clear, what we're proposing is a deadline for submission from the universities on Friday, September 3rd. This group I would then forward them all to this group on Tuesday the 7th, which is the day after Labor Day. And then you would have until, the internal deadline would be, let's just say Friday the 24th, so that we could send them back, if needed, send them back to the universities on September 27th for amendment purposes.
I think that's fine.
Okay, because our 3-day A&E extravaganza or A&E Palooza, whatever you want to call it, is scheduled for the 6th, 7th, and 8th of October.
Oh, okay, good. That's good.
Was that in Las Vegas?
Well, you all didn't authorize the travel, so I'm going to go with no.
Well, we didn't do any travel, so we ought to have all kinds of extra money.
We got 2.4 million.
Yeah.
Let's not go crazy now, folks.
Let's go to Turks and Caicos, man. Heck, Las Vegas.
I hate to be the fiscally conservative one out of this group, so let's calm it down.
Okay.
Now we can evaluate those. Things are coming up, national conferences and things like that. There'll be discussion about travel authorization. I know CLARB is having an event in Phoenix in September that Blair and I are planning to attend, but because they're limiting capacity on that one as well. NCARB has theirs coming up actually at the end of this week, so we'll be going to that, and they've limited capacity. So it's tricky how all these things are doing. The engineers, the NCES, limited capacity to voting delegates only, I found out. So we're sending two engineers and 2 surveyors. However, Maria and I will not be permitted to attend because we're not voting delegates. So we'll have to attend virtually.
Well, but wait a minute. Okay. Well, that's a whole different discussion, not for the Grants to Colleges Committee, but
Correct.
They have MBAs and legal representative sessions for a reason. So it seems to me, to me like we would really want you to go to those as a board.
Well, Alton, we can talk on the phone after this about that specifically. My point to that story was just that there's travel coming up and there'll be opportunities for it. But right now it's tricky. So we're just going to have to put our heads to it and plan well in advance for travel because these things come up. But I'll give you a ring once we're done with this and we can talk about the NCES thing separately. Because it doesn't require Melanie or Frank's attention.
Is there any other business to come before this committee? There being none. Is there a motion?
I move we adjourn.
Well, a motion to adjourn taking precedence over all other business. We are hereby adjourned. And thank you, everybody. I know this is a chunk out of your day, and I appreciate your time in dealing with this. So thanks to everybody. Maria, Michael, thank you very much for everything that you have done.
All right, thank you all, and I'll get these. I'm gonna work on these letters right now, and I'll start sending them out in the morning.
Very good.
Thank you all.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you. Good to see everyone.
You as well.
Yeah, see,
Bye.
but not
See, I know, not
physically.
feel.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.